Hello, and welcome to your creative and magical life, which is hopefully your actual life, but is also this podcast, which explores the intersections of tarot, creativity, magic, anti capitalism, social justice, and all sorts of metaphysical and mystical stuff, all with the goal of helping you cultivate a life that sparkles with magic and creativity. I'm your host, Cecily Saylor. I'm a tarot reader, a writer, a steward of creativity. I'm a double Capricorn who worships birds and dogs and all of nature. And I'm the creator of Typewriter Tarot, a project that helps people unleash their magic and creativity. Welcome to the podcast. I hope you enjoy it. I'm so glad you're here. Let's make some magic. Hello, creative spirits. Welcome to episode 3 of your creative and magical life. In this episode, we're exploring the High Priestess, which is card number 2 in the Major Arcana. It comes right after the Magician and right before the Empress. This card to me is about many things, but the first thing that comes to mind when I see this card is intuition and that experience we can have with lighting upon an insight, a piece of knowledge, wisdom, or guidance that seems to come through us from somewhere else. And that somewhere else seems to have no distinction between past, present, and future. Like all the information is available, all the timelines are collapsed or concurrent or simultaneous. And from that space where everything that's happened has already happened, we get these bits of insight about what to look out for, what direction we need to turn to. And we do not live in a world that encourages us to think or move intuitively. There's a lot in our culture and in our world that actively tries to separate us from intuitive knowing. And so often there's, some kind of crisis in adulthood where that living in the constructed world starts to break down for us. It doesn't work anymore. And then maybe there's space as we start to look around and try something else. We begin to perhaps connect with intuition on a deeper level. That's probably not true for everyone. Some people probably have been connecting with their intuition their entire lives, but those folks probably also had caregivers and parents who help them understand what intuition is or how to use it or how important it is to listen to it. So, we're going to get into that card today. And I'm so excited to have this conversation about the High Priestess with someone who I see as a High Priestess in the real world. Ebony Isis Booth is a friend, a mentor, a guide, a coach, someone who has helped me tremendously. I've been working with Ebony for probably a year and a half as a coaching partner. She's been coaching me. And our work together, as I mentioned in the episode, has been sometimes it feels like life saving. Ebony is just a wise, loving, hilarious, inspiring person with so much wisdom to share. And I think you're going to get a lot out of this conversation. So just you can expect that the interview will get started. She and I talk a little bit about creativity and magic and the creative and magical life stuff at the beginning, and then we get into the card more specifically. So I think what you hear at the beginning will be really beautiful and valuable, but the part about the card is coming. Just yeah, keep listening. After the interview, you're going to hear some submissions from people in the typewriter tarot community. In my last email or in a recent email, I sent out a survey asking folks how they experience their intuition, how they know their intuition is talking to them. And I asked that question because intuition is very abstract. And like I said, the world often works to separate us from intuitive connection. And so when we start to investigate or bring it back into our lives or attempt to, there's kind of this question of like, well, how do I do that? How do I know it's my intuition versus some other part of me trying to influence my decision? Is it a projection? Is it my anxiety, et cetera? And so I asked the community to share what they know so you can see and hear some different examples of what it can look like. And maybe this will help you have a better understanding of what intuition feels like, sounds like, looks like when it comes knocking on your door. So you'll hear that after the interview. I also share a creative prompt to help you work with the High Priestess. But just real quick, let me tell you what this card looks like. And I'm talking about the Smith Rider-Waite version of the High Priestess. In this card, you see a female figure seated kind of a straight, uh, like not kind of a neutral face, like neither a smile nor a frown, looking a little bit serious or at least looking thoughtful. The figure is wearing sky blue colored robes with some outline of like some white lacing through there. And the gown in her lap begins to become very flowy and very watery. It looks like a waterfall. And then there's a very slim crescent moon at her feet facing up into the diagonal, like it could contain something. And then in the high priestess's lap is a scroll, and you can see a few letters on the scroll, Tora, suggestive of the word Torah, an ancient spiritual text, and also all the letters we need to create the word tarot. Behind the high priestess is a curtain adorned with symbols, images of pomegranates, which are associated with Persephone, the myth of Persephone, and her journey into the underworld. And then on either side of the high priestess is a column. One is black, one is white, one has the letter B, and one has the letter J. And those are connected to some symbolism in Freemasonry, which Arthur Waite, I believe, had some connection to. And then behind that curtain, there's a body of water. And you can see just slimly through the curtain that the water is there. And the suggestion is that the high priestess can access the subconscious information, the mysterious information of that contained in that body of water, the vastness of that water, simply by sitting there, receiving, just intending to access it. So she's very much associated with this wisdom, this knowing, this intuitive experience that brings us information from ancestors, from other times, like I said, from the future. So all of these symbols together create this portrait of the high priestess that we see. And we're going to dive into that card with Ebony. She's going to tell you a little bit about herself at the beginning of the episode, but yeah, I think I'll let her introduce herself. She does, of course, a beautiful job. She knows herself powerfully and wonderfully. And I've already told you that she's just an incredible person. And I hope you learn a lot from hearing from her today. Enjoy. Hello, Ebony. I am so happy you are here on the podcast.
Hello.
I can't describe my happiness. Thank you for coming on this show.
Are you kidding me? Thank you for inviting me. I am thrilled at the opportunity to, wax poetical about tarot. So, and whatever else is in your brilliant creative mind, I'm always excited to explore.
You're too kind. First off, tell the people who you are. What do you
Yes.
want? What do they need to know about you?
What do you need to know about me? My name is Ebony Isis Booth. I am a transformation and life alchemy coach. I specialize in working with women of culture who are in new and emerging leadership positions. I see myself as a guide that supports and shines a light to help people navigate change that is already happening every day. So I'm not really creating anything, but I'm really witnessing folks as they create their realities and their lives. That lights me up and brings me a lot of joy. Additionally, I work as a cultural strategist. And specialize in community engagement. I believe that we deserve to see ourselves elevated. So I work with organizations to bridge the gap between their mission and the people that they are purposed to serve. You know, other than that, I'm a sister, auntie, daughter, homegirl, Olorisha in the Lukumi faith of Santeria. And yeah, I'm here.
I am so glad you are here. And you truly are a powerful witness, as I will have mentioned in the introduction to this interview. Your work, my work with you has been transformational for me. And you are right, the change goes on and on. And it's a question of how do we show up for it and what do we want to do with that? And your support has been incredibly meaningful and powerful for me in navigating what life brings. So I thank you for that. And I know you're doing it times 100 times, I don't, by multiples for other people. So, so glad you are here at this time and that I
Thank you
get
for
to know
having me.
you.
Yeah, it's really, yeah, it feels like a full circle moment, um, beyond just our coaching relationship, but from a business perspective and entrepreneurial journey of kind of, I don't know how we don't necessarily need to go into how we met, but it was in a coaching container, a group coaching space around spiritual entrepreneurship. And in the Spiritual Entrepreneurship Academy, Cecily and I met and have, I don't know, been, I think, both equally blessed to just continue to interact along this journey for both of our growth. So shout out to you as well.
Thank you for that. I receive that. I appreciate that. So, this is a podcast about living a creative and magical life. And I have no doubt that your life is full of creativity and magic. But tell us a little bit about where you send it. Where does your creativity and your magic find expression? How do you, it's hard, it's an abstract, sometimes an abstract question, sometimes a very real practical question, but how does the magic and creativity come back to you? What is it like to be in
Mm,
your creative magical life? We can spend a
mm,
whole episode on that, I'm sure.
yeah. I remember having this moment. I was working in administration for as a director of diversity, equity, and inclusion at a predominantly white institution, a private school. And one day I got up from my desk and like, I don't know, I had like this moment of like something like spirit struck me. And I was like, I require creative agency in order to exist. And it was this thing that it just dawned on me. And I remember like marching across the school ground to my colleague's office and like barging into her office and being like, I require creative agency in order to do this job. Like she was just kind of like, okay, yeah. But it that's been true my whole life. And anytime I'm in a situation where I cannot rely on my creativity, my intuition, my intellect and capacity to bring my ideas or visions to fruition, I'm out of alignment. I'm miserable. I'm not happy. So to some degree, I feel like my creativity comes back to me in the alignment, in joy, in the evidence of my intention. You know what I mean? And that's what I think magic is. I think about magic being, making apparent what what has previously been unseen. And so my creativity is what makes the magic happen, and I have to honor that. Anytime I'm not honoring it, I am sad boots and I just am a mess. So the more I can lean into that knowing, the easier life has been for me.
Yeah, I love how you stated that around like, I must have creative agency in order. I mean, in that case, it was to do this job, but it's like, in order to live my life in a
Mhm.
satisfying way, I must. And
Yeah.
what a revelation. And I also think you're getting at something that I continue to kind of circulate around, like, what is the difference between creativity and magic? Are they different? Are they the same? Are they are they cousins? Are they fraternal twins? Are they, and I don't know that like we have to know, but I just love how you kind of like brought them together there. I think that relationship between them is so close, whatever it may be, but beautifully said.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I wonder what the relation. I mean, I think they could be any of those things that you just named. I feel like any construct of, but they are related. You know what I mean? Inevitably. Like, I think about, I have an idea. I thought of something. Like, I see, you know, I mean, we're in we're in the space of creativity and magic, so we can go ahead and talk. We don't have to like speak for the normies, but um when I get a vision, the way that I create is I see something. I can see it, I hear it, sometimes I'll smell it, um, some kind of spark that lets me know that something is brewing. Not everything gets followed through on, but that that's where the creativity starts. Then it becomes the making, the doing. And sometimes that could be like part of the creation is doing nothing, you know? Sometimes it's pooling resources. Sometimes the creation is in researching. Sometimes the creation is in just talking about it or going to, listen to someone else who has already done a thing similarly or, dancing about it, whatever. The creation is anything that's in the doing. The magic is in the alakazam of the pow, and here it is. So they're related in whatever way they need to be related.
Yeah, I think you laid that out really beautifully. If we're in the magic camp more fully, it's like it starts with an intention or a vision, like you said, and then there's some ritualized action, which is
Hmm.
either maybe a declaration or preparing a space so that ritualized action can happen. And yeah, and then the magic is like how it, I love the alakazam, like how it shows up, how we get to experience it in three-dimensional life in this material space. So
Hmm.
beautiful. Thank you. Now, I know that you know things about tarot. Interestingly, you and I don't talk about tarot that much because I just bring you a lot of my problems, which are not tarot related. Tarot is my medicine. But I know you know things, but I don't know how tarot came into your life or how you like to use it. Yeah, what is your relationship with it these days or over time?
Yeah. Tarot, like I have all like since I was a little girl, I grew up in the church. I grew up Southern Baptist. So I never saw a tarot card at all, like as a child. But I would watch like Goosebumps, and you would see those episodes where someone would go to like a palm reader or like the psychic with the crystal ball, and they would always flip over these cards, and I would be like, what do those mean? Like, what is that? Like I understood that there was divination happening because I understood the ways that ritual were present in the church, but I had this like natural curiosity about it. But it wasn't until it was like the early 2000s, I want to say, that I saw tarot cards in the hands of Black women. And then I was like, oh, okay. And in particular, I can say, the first place I want to point that to is to Lady Speech Sankofa. I don't know, maybe some of your listeners have seen her on TikTok or on Instagram. She's just kind of like an iconic Black witch, wonderful human spiritualist, and also like a longtime friend of mine. Like we go back. But when I realized that the tarot cards could be used for me and also have the messages be something that was being translated through another person who looked like me and in friendship and in like coven, that was when I started to really become interested in the cards and how they're used as technology. And they're still really, and I think maybe that's why I don't outwardly market or read, you know, cards, because it's a very personal technology. It's a divining tool. And I don't want to be picking around in everybody's, I have some reasons for how I feel, why I feel how I feel about tarot readings and why I don't give them to people. But I can always refer you to someone who can give you an amazing reading, but or they can go to you. You get a reading from Cecily. It's not my ministry unless spirit tells me to pull
Mm.
out the cards and bring them in for clarity in a session, or maybe sometimes I'll do a reading for someone at the end of a container after we've established some kind of relationship. I have had situations where I have read for people on demand, kind of like, and I really don't like how quickly it becomes like a parlor trick.
Mhm.
Um, and for me, the way that I read, sometimes a stranger might not necessarily be ready to hear what comes up.
Mhm.
And so editing the message is just a lot of work. And I'm like not interested in doing that. Also, I think my last reason, which I'm clearly just gonna, talk about my beef with tarot,
Do it.
is people don't listen. I
Mm.
think, a lot of times folks, let me see, I'll speak about myself. I have never had a tarot reading that told me something that I did not know. They have very often told me something I did not want to hear, something I
Mhm.
was avoiding, something I was hiding from. So to give someone a reading who is looking for an answer that is other than the one, the what the facts they already know, is an exercise in me participating in your own, delusion or codependency or, lack of integrity. There's probably another issue at hand that has nothing to do with these cards or the person who's pulling them for you. So, and that seems like a lot of paperwork to go over, for somebody who wants to just pull up and be told whether or not, you know, Bay is the one. And it's like, not if he's already married to somebody else. Sorry. Like that's just, is it your man, or is he a good man, or is he your man? It was, we got to get real clear with the questions that we ask spirit when we show up. So anyway, that's my answer for tarot. It's been long deep down in my heart for at least the past 20 plus years.
Yeah, I have some. Well, first, I want to say, or you reminded me of this moment, this experience I had maybe in the first couple years that I was reading tarot publicly. And I was reading at this Halloween party that was at a like bar of some kind. So you yeah.
Hmm.
Uh,
I get it.
and a tall man who was dressed like a banana, who was
Oh
drunk,
goodness.
sat down and wanted to like see what I had, see what I could tell
Hmm.
him. And he had some bad relationship trouble. Like it was like you could tell he had gone through this breakup that like he very much really created and made bad. And his middle card, I remember, was the Hanged Man reversed. And it
Oh.
was like, I was like, I could see everything I felt like about the situation. But the card I saw was showing me that like the person I was meant to talk to could not even receive, it was all fucked up from the beginning. But luckily it was
Hmm.
at a bar and it was one of those short ones. And but yeah, that's so boundaries and know why, know who, know how.
Yeah, because I'm see with that story, I appreciate that, but I'm also like, I knew what the problem was at Banana Suit. You know what I
Sure.
mean?
Right,
Like,
right.
like you see it coming and you're just like, okay, girl. Like,
I
I
had
have a
not yet
friend.
learned how to say no to drunk men
Yeah,
in banana
like,
suits.
no, no, this might not be for you because I'm gonna say something and your feelings gonna be hurt, and then we out here, I can't be responsible. I don't want to. It's just,
Yeah.
yeah, that's my boundary around it.
I respect that, and I like that you model that for the rest of us. One follow-up question I had around that was like, what was it like? Was it a deal for you at all to kind of bring these other spiritual practices into your life coming from a Southern Baptist family or upbringing?
Mm, You know, um, yes and no. I think I kind of made it a bigger deal than it
Mm,
was.
okay.
Um, and okay, whew, that's so I left the church at 16.
Hmm.
And now my grandfather and grandmother were pastor and evangelist of a church. So when I say I grew up in the church, I grew up like
Hmm.
second generation preacher's kid, but I lived in an intergenerational household. So I basically was a preacher's kid. My grandmother and grandfather were prime examples of like upstanding, good Southern Baptist folk, right? Like pillars in the community, if you will. But by the time I was 13, both of them had passed, or my grandmother had passed away, and we relocated from our hometown across the country to Denver, Colorado.
Mm.
And I joined my aunt's church, which is a bigger Baptist church. What happened to me socially was when they call it in the church, I lost my covering, meaning my status as being the Reverend Fowler's granddaughter. I was just I was just a person in the church. You know what I mean? And there I realized how how complicated that can be, to navigate Christianity without having guidance and leadership from trusted mentors and spiritual leaders. And by the time I was, so that was when I was 13. And by the time I was 16, I was like, I'm off, I'm done. Like, I can't keep going back. And my mom was pretty much okay with that. When I was 19, I started to started to learn about African spiritual traditions and Ifa, Yoruba, from Nigerian ancient ancestral practices and one of the oldest religions in the world, Ifa. I started to learn about that, be in community with folks who were celebrating a more Pan-Africanist way of being and Pan-African ways of knowing. And that's when I started to, you know, set altars or, burn incense. That was like my head wrap moment of the the 99s and the 2000s, where I was like, all shea butter and beads and head wraps and writing poetry and things like that. And not just the aesthetic, but really on a spiritual level where I felt like I found something that connected. I think my mom thought it was a phase.
Mm.
The other relatives in the family were kind of like, no big deal. It wasn't until I think I proclaimed that I didn't identify as Christian, that I
Mm.
started to shake the table in the family, where they were like, what? You don't believe in Jesus? And I was like, it's like, but you were baptized. And it was just this whole big thing. So I took I, that, that was an injurious event for me. And I took it really personally and deep to heart. And I kind of hid my spirituality from my family for years after that, years and years and years. And really, it wasn't until actually this past year when I was actually initiated into Santeria and Lukumi that I came out, so to speak, as a priestess in my initiation. And with all the support and love from my parents and, my uncle and, there's some other relatives that I haven't, I guess, come out to, but they don't, I don't, don't really feel like it's necessary. But it was a really long way for me to say that the pushback was in my head based off my feeling that I would be rejected or abandoned for being different. I was being othered and therefore, you know, oppressed religiously. But that was a story that I told myself, and that it wasn't true.
I'm glad it wasn't true. And I think that's really, I mean, I didn't grow up raised in a religion, which was like a benefit and a detriment. I think like I didn't have a real spiritual basis for much of anything, though I think I was craving something. We went to a couple different churches a few different times when my mom was having a little bit of like midlife crisis kind of thing.
Mm,
And one of them was Unitarian, where it was like, every whatever you believe is fine, which was nice, but it didn't help me like develop something. But I think that the flip side of that is like the rigidity we people often experience through religious institutions, and that fear that comes up when you try to kind of find your own spiritual path that looks a little bit different.
mhm.
And it's kind of beautiful how yours has evolved over time, and you're in this really interesting place right now, and I want to come back to that in a little bit. And I'm
Okay.
glad you mentioned your priestess status, because this is an episode about the high priestess.
Ow.
Hey, and let's get into that a little bit. I'm
Okay.
gonna kick it off with a maybe weird, cheesy hypothetical, but you're walking down the street, and this frazzled, lost-looking lady is kind of wandering chaotically down the sidewalk, and she stops you and she says, "Excuse me, can you tell me about the high priestess? Who is she? Where is she? Where can I find her?" What would you say to this frazzled lady who has no business stopping you asking questions, but nevertheless does so?
I want to tell her, I want to say this, like, I don't know if it's cheesy and like cheese on top of cheese, but like she is inside you. She's you. You are her. You are the
Mhm.
high priestess.
Yeah.
We just now, and I also want to be like, girl, where are you running from? Like, why are you so frazzled? What do you need? Here, drink some water, sit down. Like, you know what I mean? Drink a cup of tea, eat a shortbread cookie, have a breath. Let's chat, you know? But the answer really is like she's in you. She's your birthright. Yeah.
I love that. What are your, to expand on that, what does the high priestess mean to you? Or
Yeah.
when she shows up in your readings, what does that tell you?
He tells me a lot about patience and cycles
Mm.
and stillness and a kind of knowing that is not knowledge, but like knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. Like it's all of those things together. It's like equanimity, ease, and also like fierce grace. You know
Mm.
what I mean?
Mhm.
Like kind of like there's this one deck, I think it's called the African American Tarot. It's like the high priestess is just like posted up in her blue robe, giving throat chakra, like, I'm gonna tell you what I have answers. You know what I mean? But it's also this, like in that card, there's a sword that is at her foot, but the sword is broken.
Mm.
So it's also like this, my grandmother used to say this, there's a hymn and she would say, we will study war no more. I'm gonna lay down my burdens down by the riverside and study war no more. And she's holding a scroll
Mhm.
and the sword is broken at her feet and she's wearing her blue robe and she has on this like hat, this red hat. And it's kind of like we're not going to fight about this, but we're going to figure it out. And I have the answer for you. You, but it's going to like, you might just be at a waning stage and you want to be waxing and you will get there, but you got to, things have to come full circle. So be patient, be still, and know is a lot of what the high priestess has to say when she comes up for me.
Yeah. I love that broken sword at her feet as this kind of contrast or this rejection of, with a sword, it's so action oriented. Like you pick
Mhm,
it up and you push it forward, you stab it, you raise it, you um puncture things with
mhm,
it, you start wars with it, right? And like there's kind of like this male energy around that. And even a sword, I suppose, is a kind of phallic stand-in, we could say. And there it is broken at her feet. Like she doesn't need any of that shit. She's like, I just need to stay where I am. And in this place of stillness, she has access to, like you said, knowledge, wisdom, understanding, kind of all together. I love that blending. And so she's sort of like anti-action. There's no chasing, there's no doing, like it's just kind of like the knowing before you can do anything. And I think we're
mhm.
always clamoring for, if I do this, or if I listen to that person, or if I follow that formula, or if I use this template, or if I take this class, or if whatever, then I'll know what I'm not doing right now, and I'll know what I should be doing instead of. And I think we live in a culture where we're taught to look everywhere else but inside ourselves for the answer, unless you're a
Mhm.
man, unless you're a white man. Um, and then you know everything inside you.
Yeah,
Uh,
it was just implanted. You just channeled it. You drew it down. You just know. You just
yeah,
know because that's the way the world
you are the
works.
knowing.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and so we are taught to look everywhere else, particularly women, everywhere else for what should be happening, what we should know, what we need to know. It's all out there. And there's no instruction or very little instruction, I think, in at least in like mainstream, all the places we might go, like any person might go in life, the schools, universities, jobs, a lot of churches too, like are not gonna teach us how to look inside and find that.
There's also like I really agree, and I feel we're in this like pop instant popcorn era of like also YouTube University, where it's kind of like we don't give ourselves the time to be seasoned. You know what I mean? Like if when you season meat and let it rest before you cook it, you know
Mhm.
what I mean? It's like a step in the process. It's a part of the cycle. This instant gratification, instant information, become, you know, a millionaire overnight, get rich quick, whatever, learn it, do it. This is, I did it, so now you can do it too. That's just not how the world works. And I've really deep down in my heart believe that like 9.9 out of 10 times folks are faking it. Because if you think about how the worship of fake it till you make it as a doctrine for success, when it's not working, when the success isn't coming, when faking it is hard and making you lose you don't even know who you are because you've been faking it so long, like it's not because you are defective. It's because you're not seasoned. You haven't actually gotten to the wisdom. You've been riding in the confidence lift and haven't gotten the experience to make you an expert at a thing. So, you know, high priestess, I think the patience is that this will come back around again. So you're going to do this again and you're going to do it again. And every time it's going to look a little bit different. And then you're now, what did you learn the last time? You almost died. We riding and dying. It's like, oh, they say the weapons formed against me shall not prosper, but sometimes I might be getting grazed out here in these streets, and the weapons feel like that one was kind of close to my ear. Like, so, what do you learn on each round where you get the opportunity to choose again? Um, and that is something that is not taught in institutions and is often not taught in churches. I don't know. And maybe that's part of why I teach it, why I live it at the very
Yeah.
least, because I do really feel like it's missing in the world.
Yeah, and I think it's everything. Like she is the high priestess is number 2 in the major arcana. Like
Mhm.
first, the fool's kind of like the blank slate. The magician shows up first, interestingly, to show us that like we can create, we are creative beings, we can co-create with the universe. And then the high priestess comes next to say, like, but it's not all about that. It's also
Mhm.
like, what's your relationship to yourself? And if it were me making the tarot, I might flip them. I might put her first and like say, do you know yourself? Like, do you know how to sit with yourself? Do you know how to reflect on what like the weapons you've encountered in the streets again this time and like where
Yeah.
you are in that spiral and how the lesson was the same but also looked different and how
Mhm.
you were the same but you were also different? Can you sit with that? And
Mhm.
like my theory is kind of like the more you know yourself, the stronger your magic can be, which is kind of why I would flip them. But yeah, I think like it's so lacking in people who are willing, and it's also really kind of hard to grasp as like we can understand an action or we can understand like a process probably, but like this stillness or a kind of what looks like, if you look at that card, it's like she's just sitting there. She's not doing anything
Mm-mm.
that we can tell, just knowing. She's just sitting there knowing. And
Waiting for you to show up frazzled and ask her a question so
that
she can look at you.
you don't
You
want to hear
know,
the answer to.
she's like the oracle from the Matrix, just
Or
in her
from like
house.
Greek mythology and like all of
Yeah.
yeah.
But I mean, specifically the movie The Matrix, the first oracle, who's like at home baking cookies,
Mm,
smoking a cigarette at her kitchen table.
yeah.
And Neo comes in like, tell me everything you know. And she's like,
Slow it down.
what? Do you want a cookie? Like, so yeah, it's true. I don't know. That's an interesting idea about flipping the magician. And it's interesting because those are like two powerful arcana that come in. Like, the fool is just like, we out here. And maybe um I took a tarot course once that talked about the numerology of the major arcana, and
Mm,
the zero of the fool being like the primordial abyss,
mhm.
um out of which comes one.
Yeah.
And so two being the binary, kind of like the divine feminine presence that comes in with high priestess. And I still am, but I'm also like, as I say that, I'm like, that feels like a chicken or egg kind of situation of like the magician.
Yeah.
Okay, I get it. And I don't know that people like, I feel like I've been magic my whole life.
I think everybody is.
Right. But the thing is, you have to believe it about yourself before you can believe it for everybody else.
Yeah.
And that piece of like, the magician has, I know we're not talking here to talk about him, but the magician has
I actually
everything.
don't have a guest for the magician show yet. So.
The magician has everything. I got somebody you might want to talk to.
Okay.
But he has all of the tools, everything that you're going to discover on your journey. He has the wands, the swords, the pentacles, and the cups or chalices, right? And so he's here to show you with all of the elements and all of these implements that like, here's you choose your weapons.
Here's the
How do you want to put?
materials we have
Yeah.
provided for you in this life. And
And then you get to this lady who's like, you don't need none of that. I mean, it's cool that you have it, But if you don't know what to do with you're just gonna hurt yourself. You're gonna poke your eye out.
with that wand. Yeah, and I think like one thing I think about the magician coming first is like one of the first lessons I think we experience before we really have like much cognitive awareness is that like we are actors, like the world responds to us, like even when we're babies and we're hungry and we're crying. And if we have a tender, loving caregiver, there will be a response. And that kind of like calling out brings something to us, and I think like that as when we come into the world raw and like, what the fuck is this? And who am I? That realization or that awareness that like, oh, I am an actor. Like
Mm,
things respond to me. I see that as like a first important lesson.
yeah. It's good. It gives like, I don't know, it's more like divine feminine than nurturing maternal. You know what I
Yes.
mean? Like it, and so there's this difference of like, I don't get the impression that High Priestess is going to invite you to sit on her lap and like rock you or coddle. You know what I mean? Like,
No, I didn't mean she was the one who comes when
oh,
you're
okay.
crying. I just mean the magician as an archetype, like being the number one, like the first like lesson the fool will encounter. I can see a correlation. I might be reaching to that like
Of how he
awareness we
resources.
develop as humans that like when I speak or act or make a fuss or whatever, there is usually some response, like if there's caring
Yeah.
humans around. And then we're
Yeah.
like learning through that, like, well, how am I going to act? And like, how do people respond to my different actions? And and there's something kind of magical in the fact that like we're here and we're in connection with things around us, even though,
Mm.
we come to live in a place where we often feel very separate. But that's a lie.
I mean, yeah. I see that as the magician being like the first sight of witnessing yourself being resourced. You know what I mean?
Mm,
And
I
I'm
like that.
thinking like while I'm listening to you, I'm like in my mind, I'm like, there should be like a movie about this where it's like the actual fool's journey because, you know, what are the ways that you stumble across the magician in life? You know what I mean? Where and it's like some dude who's like in the woods, you know what I mean? Like ambling on about whatever and like talking to himself and like pounding a hammer or like, setting some shit on fire, something explodes. It's like, you know what I mean? Like,
The
I don't know.
Unabomber?
Yes. Maybe like archetypally, perhaps, but
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like on that journey where you meet this person and you're just like overwhelmed, where it's like, bro,
Mm,
you got a sandwich? Like, can I sleep here tonight? Like, am I safe? Should I keep going? Like how much time do you spend with the magician and like how do you come to the high priestess? Like when
mm,
you engage with her, like how is that happening? Is she, are you the frazzled
right.
woman on the street when you find her? And if so, like she might hurt your feelings a little bit and be
Yeah.
like, kick rocks or make you feel, because there have definitely been times where I have been dragged by my own reading where
Yes.
I'm
Oh,
like,
yes.
oh God, I knew you were gonna say that. Why? It's like, all these swords. Stop it. I know I overthink everything. Leave me alone. I'm a Libra. I can't help it. So yeah.
Why do you see me on a cellular level? Yeah, and I think, that of course there are, as we practice tarot, there's like the gender binary disruption that we want to create all the
Mhm.
time. And, but the high priestess gives us this like yeah, this divine feminine depiction. The moon, the crescent moon is often at her feet, that connection to like the lunar cycle and this like fluid way of moving through life or accessing information versus like the yang kind of energy of action and forward motion. And then she's sitting in front of that curtain. She has access to like a whole, we don't get to know what's behind the curtain. I mean, we do, but not all at once. Like
You
she
ain't
gets to
ready.
know, and we can talk to her, but we can't go back there.
Mm-mm.
And I think I'm kind of like meandering a little bit, but to kind of package what you were saying about wisdom, understanding, and knowledge, like one word that a big word that comes up for me when I see this card is intuition.
Mm.
And often when it comes up, I'm like going to ask someone like, what's your relationship to your intuition? And do you have like, do you get information in non-conventional ways, let's say, and do you pay attention to it? And so, do you think intuition is a good word for the blending of wisdom, knowledge, and understanding? Or where do you put intuition in the land of the high priestess?
Mm. Um, I think the word that just came to me is trust. So, intuition in the land of the high priestess, like when said earlier, like, the ant, she lives in you. One of the things I say often is trust in the you of today.
Mm.
So perhaps you have never listened to your intuition before. There's been challenges with it. You don't know how to trust your gut because bad things have happened before. That's information that you have now so that you can choose to trust your gut this time. You get to choose again. By not choosing, you confirm whatever perceivably wrongdoing or mistake happened in the past. Intuition is one of those things that I think sits right next to spirit. Um, and so the thing about like spirit speaks to me, I'll use myself. Spirit speaks to me when I am quiet, when I am still, when my nervous system is regulated. And that conversation can be a whisper. Sometimes I refer to things as being like, ooh, that's loud. And it's loud when I'm like, I'm having an embodied reaction or response, or like I get a glimmer or a tingle or like goosebumps or the hairs in the back of my neck stand up or, you know, a, a visual glimmer, whatever it might be, right? When they're more apparent, or I refer to them as being loud because typically spirit is whispering. My intuition is like I can hear it. I can hear the yes or I'll hear the no. And then I will just do the opposite anyway. So I'm saying all that to say that I'm curious about people who say that they can't trust their intuition or don't hear it because it's like, okay, that feels like data and a good place to start. But how do we get you to a place of regulation and stillness so that you can begin to trust? And how willing are you to allow yourself to exist or operate at that level of vulnerability? And that's where transformation starts to happen. Like, what changes are you willing to make in order for that? Because you can't just turn it on and be like, I want to trust my intuition. Okay. that we gotta do some digging. You know what I mean? Like, if you do not trust your intuition, my question is like, how long has it been like that? When is the last time you did trust it? When's the last time your intuition spoke to you and you actually followed it? Because sometimes it's like you hear it and you did the opposite thing and a bad thing happened and you're like, oh, see, I can't trust my intuition. No, you you can trust your intuition because your gut told you not to do that dumb shit, and then you did it anyway. And now you sit here blame intuition because you were being hard headed because you're not listening.
Mm,
Are you gonna listen to your intuition? Do you trust yourself enough to listen to the intuition? If not, then you can't blame spirit for you being hard headed.
right.
Like, that's not fair. And the thing is, like, we're still like the same spirit, the same spiritual protection, the same gravity, the same space that I hold is holding me and all of us on this rock spinning around in this universe that is ever expanding, right? Like it is we are all inextricably linked and connected to it. I believe that deeply. I don't think it is as difficult as perhaps we fear it might be to honor that by just listening. When you feel some shit that tells you don't do that, don't walk down that alley. That's your intuition. Those may be your ancestors. Don't text that dude back. And it's like, but I just want to see. I just want to know. It's like, but your spirit told you no. It said no because it already knew what was on the other side of that phone. He was gonna say some bullshit. Now you sitting here crying. Now you feel like now you're upset because you didn't listen when spirit said no. We don't want to hear no because we don't want to. Our egos are like brolic. I've been talking for a long time. I'm gonna take a beat because I could go off on a whole tangent about the how our ego overrides our intuition
Mm,
all the, all the time.
yeah. And I think, no, thank you for every word you spoke. Couple things. You were talking about all of us interconnected, like us, the world, the plants, the animals, the planets, the stars, the expanding galaxies. Like that's all one soup we're a part of. And I kind of think of the whatever is behind the curtain for the high priestess is like the everythingness. It's like
Mm-hmm.
I also kind of think when I think about this card and in the workbook where we journal about every card, the next version is going to bring up the mycelial network. Like the high priestess is kind of the
Mm-hmm.
mycelial network. She's connected underground and through the trees and through the mushrooms. And so what the snail knows, she knows. What the leaves know, she knows, because she's like connected in that way. And I think like the other part of it is that understanding this distinction of like, or the way I think about it is like the soul and the body are different, and the soul is infinite and the body is finite and mortal.
Mm-hmm.
And the soul's like been around the block. Like it's seen other histories, it's seen other lifetimes, it's had other ancestors too and other lineages, and all of that is still connected to the soul. But if we're here in our ego and really focused on like right now or yesterday or like 2 weeks from now, and like what those people think about us or like how this person's going to react to what we're going to do, then the intuition, the soul, all of that wisdom cannot come through because we're so in these like blinders of just like of the ego. And I think that's one distinction when we're maybe helping someone develop a connection to intuition is like, does it feel like it's coming from this graspy, urgent, um, needy place, or this like overly confident place, or does it come from this like softer, calmer, like I'm just baking cookies, smoking my cigarettes, like knowing what's up kind of place?
Mm-hmm.
And it's something that's kind of like comes, you mentioned a lot of different modes, like the goosebumps, the hairs on the back of your neck, the whispers, the dreams. Sometimes it's shouts, sometimes it's that like song coming on right at that moment, and you're like, oh fuck. Um, all the different ways it can communicate with us if we're willing to listen, if we're willing to trust it. And of course, like it's not, I've been working with my intuition for a while, but I still fuck up. And like you were
Mm-hmm.
coaching me through a situation where like my intuition told me, don't do that. And I was like, well, I could probably like trust that it'll be fine. And my intuition was so right. And so
Yeah.
was everyone in my life who told me, I don't think that's going to work out. And
Yeah,
But like we want to hope, we want to but it would just really be
sure.
nice if it worked out like this. And I think our intuition is like we can also notice it because it's gonna ask us to do things that like the rest of the world isn't going to ask us to do. It's going to be a departure usually
Yeah.
in some form or fashion. And if you're wanting to like let me get connected to my intuition, it's like great, yes, please. But then there's the work of like following through and being willing to make a departure from, your intuition might say like you need to leave that job, baby. Like you got to get out of there. It
Yeah.
is ruining your body. It is eating you up inside. And you're like, but my paycheck and like, understandable. But
Mhm.
your intuition's like, "No, you gotta go, and we're gonna set you up." But you have to be
Mhm.
willing to, like, walk first, and
Yeah.
that's where the trust comes in.
Mhm.
And I think I was also gonna bring in this idea of truth, like, that is your truth for you. Like, your
Mm.
boss and your workplace and all of capitalism wants you to stay in that shitty job and eat that shit and, like, destroy yourself. But your truth is like, I need creative agency to like live a fulfilling life. So
Yeah.
I've got to like make some hard choices sometimes and go out on a limb and trust that if my intuition is saying, get out of this relationship, get out of this job, um, don't give your dog to that person, whatever, like you need to, um, you have to like make the hard choice and like,
Yeah.
and take the trust of like, this will be uncomfortable and I don't know how this is going to work out. And some people are not going to be happy about this. And can I face
Mm.
that? And how can I then we jump to the strength card. It's like, how can you love yourself through, people's reactions? But those are some of the things that came
Yeah.
up for me as you were talking.
I I mean, thank you. That yeah, all yes to all of the above. I think that hmm, there's a lot so there's a lot to be said for really prioritizing and telling the truth about what we need.
Mm, yeah.
And so your truth might I don't know that the truth is necessarily like this job is this job is sucking my soul, right? That wasn't my truth. That was an a judgment, an observation wrapped in a judgment that made me feel like shit because I was allowing my soul to be sucked at this job, right? So now all of my energy is feeding that narrative. And every time I repeat, this job is sucking my soul, I am feeding that narrative and that story. My soul is like, now why am I in it? Because I told you we didn't want to be here. You know what I mean? My ego is saying, you're being disrespected. You don't have creative agency. They don't see you for who you are. They don't know how brilliant you are. You're supposed to be better. You should be making more money. My ego's pissed, big mad, right? But all of the parts of me that are human, flesh, vulnerable, sweet, creative, wanting to manifest these things and teach people new ways of being and all that, those parts are like, I'm just going to lay back here and sleep because mom and dad are fighting and I can't even engage. Right. So my need to be seen, heard, and valued goes unmet because I don't trust that if I say at work to my superior, I need to be seen, valued, and heard in order for me to continue to show up to work here. I don't trust myself to say that, or I don't trust them to hear me when I say that. And I'm not advocating for myself. So you see, now I'm caught in this loop of dissatisfaction because I won't tell my truth.
Mm,
I won't even tell my truth to myself for a long time because what I am telling myself is that my soul is being sucked out and they don't value me. And my ego is telling me that I'm better than this. And it's just really making me feel like shit and I can't get out of bed in the morning. You know what I mean? Like, The power of telling your truth, and Iyanla Van Zant calls it the rock gut truth. And
Mm.
it's because it makes you, it's like, I do not want to say that the truth is that this job is fathoms beneath me, that I am priceless, that what I have to contribute matters, that my voice is important, that I am worthy and deserving, that, like, I just don't want to be here anymore. Like, I don't want to tell myself that, because then what? What do I think is going to happen? You know what I mean? So then guess what? Make another story. You're going to be broke. You're not going to be able to pay your rent. You're going to lose your job. You're not going to be able to find another job. A job like that doesn't exist. People are out here struggling. You're in a position of like, and I just keep making stories. It's so much easier for us when we get stuck in that loop where we're just refusing to trust ourselves or tell our truths or listen to our intuition or follow our soul's true purpose, when we are wrapped up in ego, when we are making just constant accommodations instead of to justify our needs going unmet. We are out of alignment with spirit. We are not, we are frazzled. We are a hot mess. We are exhausted. We are scared to even go we're scared to go to the high priestess. We're not even on a fool's journey yet. We haven't even packed up a knapsack and walked off a cliff yet. So why am I saying all that? Because you have to really get honest with yourself, with ourselves. I had to get honest with myself about what I needed and take accountability and take account of, like, oh, I have really just been out here not taking care of my body or my life. I'm drinking, I'm fueled by caffeine and stress. I'm constantly on my phone playing the game of comparison with whatever else is going on in the world. I am having relationships with people who contribute to that narrative and don't make me feel good about myself and are not fulfilling me. I'm hiding my true self from my loved ones and myself. I'm not in any kind of consistent spiritual practice. I'm not eating well. I'm not drinking water. I'm spending, like, it's me. I'm the problem. But it felt good to just show up to work with like a light beat and a cute outfit on and be like, this place sucks.
Yes.
Like, fuck that. You know what I mean? It was me, and it was systemic oppression, and it was racism, and it was, yes, all isms and schisms had a part. However, there are certain elements of that I can control. And it really came down to just honoring the fact that, like, my ancestors did not go through what they went through for me to be sitting up here not eating 3 squares a day. Like, I don't live in the capital and have access to food and water. So eat something, go brush your teeth, get up out the bed, do one thing at a time, maybe eat a chocolate chip cookie, take a couple breaths. You're alive. You're in your body. Be in your body. Then your intuition might come peek its head out and be like, everything all right in here? You got a minute? We'd like a word. But they're not going to speak to you if you are literally warding them off with fucking caffeine and booze and blow. Like, they're not. Like, you can't. Anytime spirit does try to speak to you, you feel paranoid. Now you scared because you think you're seeing shit. It's like, nah, that was the ancestors trying to tell you to get sober. Sheesh.
Yeah. Wow. Yes. Thank you. And I did not mean to suggest that the job where you needed creative agency was not part of my hypothetical. I was not
No,
implying that.
but see, that's I don't take it as an implication because that's my actual truth. That's what happened.
Yeah.
That was my, I mean, I guess it's like, since we in here talking about spirit and the church and whatnot, like, that's my testimony. You know what I mean? Like, I was living deeply out of alignment with my purpose and my calling, and I was performing to an expectation of an unachievable goal, where the goalpost kept moving, and I was chasing some kind of recognition that was external,
Yeah.
that was in I was never going to achieve.
Yeah. That you could truly break yourself in pursuit of, where the
Yeah.
goalpost would always move.
every single time. And
Yeah.
I would just be like, "Oh, and that must be my fault. It
Right.
must be my fault. I did that. I'm not worthy. I am not good enough. I failed again." Just internalizing it and
Mm,
taking these hits. And it was like, it's not working because it's not supposed to work.
right.
It's not working because you're
It's
not supposed to be
never
here.
gonna work like that.
That's what spirit was trying to tell me.
Yeah.
You don't belong here, baby. Leave this place. There is a job out there for you. There is employment that is, yeah, you know, once I heard spirit be like, this ain't it. And I don't know how many more times you want to wake up loathing the fact that you have to get up at 7 a.m. and log on to the Zoom call in a pandemic so that this lady can, see your face and make sure you're present and accounted for. Um,
Yeah.
how many more days you want to go through that before you decide that, mm-mm. So, sometimes spirits whispers, sometimes it'll shout at you, sometimes it'll just snatch you by your taint hairs and fling you against the wall
Yes.
because you ain't listening.
It reminded me of like my drinking days. And I played this mind game for years where it was like, am I an alcoholic? Nah, well, like alcoholics are like this. And like, I'm not like
Hmm.
that because, and like, I knew deep down for a long time, this is a
Hmm.
problem. This is the source of my problems. I mean, there were
Hmm.
other sources of problems, but like the alcohol for me made all of them way worse. And I think I knew because some part of us like knows beyond the timeline. Like it knows the future, it knows the past, it knows
Hmm.
all the things. And it's like, this is the problem. And if you change this problem, if you're willing to work with this problem, all kinds of things will change. And my ego was like, I don't want to give this up. I don't know who I am without this. I don't know how to
Hmm.
deal with like how difficult life is without this as a coping mechanism. And I have no way of trusting. I was unwilling to trust that on the other side of that was something better. I just like, because I didn't see it, I didn't know it. I wanted to be like shown beforehand. And like, thankfully, in my recovery, there were people who were like, I thought that too. Here's what's
Hmm.
possible on the other side. I used to be like this. Now I'm like that. And then I had already like made the choice out of true desperation and spirit grabbing me by the taint hairs and being like, you can't go another day or you're about to lose everything. And finally, I
Hmm.
was like, I'm desperate. Okay, I'm listening. Okay.
Hmm.
Okay. And
Yeah.
bedraggled and like at a very sad state. Um,
Yeah.
I was willing to like step into the unknown, become that fool. And it's been pretty great since then. Still hard,
Yeah.
still challenging, but way better. And speaking of taint hairs, so the real reason, not the real reason, but like the initiation, the like in my brain where I was like, Ebony is the person for this episode. It was this thing you say, which is unclench your butt cheeks. And as I was
Yes.
thinking about it beforehand, sometimes in my mind it was like unclench your butthole. And I was like, that's harder to say to the mat, just like bring up buttholes. But
Hmm.
here, like, I mean, what's the difference? Splitting hairs, we're splitting taint hairs here. Um,
I love
but
it.
yeah, anyway, that's your phrase, unclench your
Uh-huh.
butt cheeks.
Yeah.
And I think that has a lot to do with the high priestess. And I hope that you'll
Absolutely.
explain that to us now.
Yeah, I mean, so much. First of all, thank you for sharing your journey, or just that piece about your journey to sobriety. I think I very similarly, I did a lot of work to, I think for my whole adult life, really, like, I didn't realize how much I allowed alcohol to become a part of my identity
Oh, yeah.
in order to not, in order to attempt to control it. And like, so, I'm like, I'm a bartender. I was a
Mm,
bartender. I became a sommelier. I sold high-end whiskey and wine for like a prestigious distributor. Like, I became I knew everything about it. It's like, oh, I know how to make a perfect Manhattan. Like I have top shelf liquor. Oh, we don't drink from the well. Like I had like all of these makings of like these are the reasons why my drinking is not alcoholism.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It was an awful lot of work, a lot of energy.
So much fucking work in your brain to count the drinks, to talk yourself into like being good with
I'm
it, to
not
like
buzzed.
sign
You can
that
hardly even
$40
tell.
check at the restaurant and be like, I have
Oh God.
$20 now.
Yeah, like why did I say I would buy that round for all of you? Just like damn, like, just because I need to be out, like I don't even like the way it's just I don't know. So I am so grateful. I am so grateful that that is not a part of my identity anymore. That I have just like I don't know. It's just yeah. I don't know. I don't miss it at all. Like I don't miss it. And it's like I was telling my dad, he asked, and I've been sober for 3 months.
Mm,
So I'm very new here. And I say that without qualifying it to be like, and it wasn't like I was drinking that much or da da da, because like I just told you, I mean, that was my spiel, you know what I mean? But when I think about it, it's like on a dating app, there was always a question about drinks. Let's go get drinks. And like I had all kinds of judgments for like the men that I would attract to be like, he's a loser. He doesn't even drink good whiskey. Like I can drink a man under the table. Like it just shit
oh
that's
yeah.
like seemed like a good idea at the time, but in retrospect did not age well. Um, so, but I've been sober for 3 months, and my dad asked me, I don't know if he was like tempting me or whatever, but he was like pouring himself a drink and he was like, "You want a hook?" And I was like, my dad and I used to drink together. We would like take a shot
Same.
of Crown together and like, that was like this bonding thing. And
But
I
we
was like,
drank
"No,
the
thanks."
dirt. We drank the Miller Lite. Sorry, go ahead.
My dad drinks Bud Ice. And it used to be Bud when I was a kid, it was Bud Heavy, but now it's Bud Ice. But and I was like, "No, thank you." And he was like, "Ever? Like, are you never gonna drink again?" And I was like, "I don't think so." Like, I feel like I've tasted all the liquor. I literally have. I've tasted it all. I could sight and smell call a varietal of wine for you blind. Like, I don't need to drink. I have had all drinks. I don't need another drink. And I am just really grateful that that is a place that I was able to get to in my life. So I appreciate you sharing your story because it also gives me the courage to like say out loud that like I stopped drinking before like why did it need to become how bad was I willing to let it get before I stopped? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Because I was going to some pretty great lengths to like to be doing math, like don't drink the whole bottle, like policing myself and like not, it's just like
Yeah.
just don't fucking do it. Like girl, you and also like you're gonna feel like shit in the morning and it's a whole thing. So um anyway, what was the question? I don't even remember where we were in our
Well,
conversation.
we're gonna come back to buttholes, but
Buttholes. Oh,
let me
right.
say congratulations
Thank
on your three
you.
months.
Thank
And
you.
thank you for sharing your story. I think part of the conundrum and the identity stuff is the way that it's all presented to us and commodified and the industry and like pop culture. My boyfriend's 13-year-old daughter is watching shows that are like, kind of age appropriate, but there's just like people drinking. It's just like getting
Booze.
shit faced on these
Mm-hmm.
shows. And it's so normal. And it's like, that's what people do. It's just what we
Mm-hmm.
do. It's not a big
Yeah.
deal.
It's
And it's like,
not by
except it's
accident.
destroying our lives. And I'm not saying everyone needs to quit. That was my relationship with it. I had 3 men in my family who are all addicted to alcohol. It killed one of them for sure, and probably
Mm.
contributed to the death of another. And it's genetic and it's nature and it's nurture and it's all of that. And everyone's, has their own relationship to it. So I don't tell anyone how it needs to be, but I think if you do struggle with it, it is very hard for all of the reasons I just mentioned. And so
Yeah.
I don't know, I'm grateful to both of us for shining a little light on it in this moment.
Yay, us. I was going to
Yay.
say that the alcohol industry is a dark place.
Yeah.
Um, so they prioritize placements. They call them passive placements to have it's a good thing when like high school parties where people get blackout drunk on the punch and stuff like that because it onboards their new drinkers, the 21 and up, that will lead to lifetime users. So like what is it? Like the remember the Smirnoff cake flavors of vodka that were
Oh
like
my God.
birthday cake flavored vodka and creamsicle and like Cardi B selling whip shots. Like they want the liquor to taste like candy so that kids will drink it and then grow dependent and continue to drink. It's like the tobacco industry. Same thing,
Yeah.
you know? So it's a dark place. But anyway, back to buttholes.
Back to buttholes. So tell us, will you please teach us, enlighten us about what unclenching one's butt cheeks has to do with the high priestess?
Okay. So remember how when we talked about like, the high priestess is sitting here, she has all of the secrets of the universe, the mycelial secrets of the universe behind her curtain. But we come to her frazzled, bedraggled on our knees. That's not really how we get to her level of equanimity, right? Oftentimes in our lives, we are unknowingly clenching the biggest muscles in our bodies, that are the muscles that are surrounding and protecting our root and sacral chakras. So hamstrings, quads, glutes, we're clenching. Notice if you're sitting in a chair right now, or if you're sitting in the car and driving, or even laying in the bed, notice whether or not you are flexing those muscles. And oftentimes it's our default to have those muscles flexed for a number of different reasons. For stability, but also anxiety lives there. It's a clenching, it's a bracing. It's something that, has us on edge all the time. When we're doing that, we're not really, that's again, energy is holding us in that space and not really allowing us to breathe and allowing our breath or our prana to flow. And I'm not saying this on like a meditative yogi thing. I'm saying like just be in your body and tell the truth about how it feels to be in your body for a moment. And so notice if and where there are places in your body that are clenching. If you're sitting still, and if you send your attention to those places and notice that they are clenching, invite them to relax. Unclench your butt cheeks and allow your bottom to soften so that you can fully be held. Your full weight is being held in the chair. Notice your breath. I'm not saying take deep box breaths or count to 4 or do anything. Not just notice that you're breathing, whether or not you think about it, or notice that you might be holding your breath. So if that's the case, I invite you to take a breath, exhale, and now that your butt cheeks are unclenched and you're breathing, in your mind's eye, call attention to that space, that triangle of space at the bottom of your pelvic floor, like the space between your genitals and your butthole, your pelvic floor, and allow that to soften down and relax a little bit. Still breathing. This is a way to call calm into your body when you are wound up, frustrated, about to get pissed off, falling asleep in a meeting, irritated at something somebody just said, standing in line at the grocery store, irritated at the person in front of you existing. It's a private moment that you can take to yourself to just notice how often your butt cheeks are clenched, you are tight, your shoulders are up, your back is clenched, you're taking shallow breaths, and your mind is racing. You can unwind all of that by softening those big muscles and relaxing, unclenching your butt cheeks. And just notice that shift. From there, once the butt cheeks are unclenched and you feel that softening, it's literally like, depending on how big your booty is, you might be able to raise yourself up 2 to 3 centimeters in height when your butt cheeks are clenched. And then when you relax them, see how far down you sink and soften. That same flow of energy that you start to feel through those muscles, send it down through your glutes and over your knees. Notice if you shifted the clench from your butt cheeks and your hips to your knees. Trail it down into your calves. See if you can chase it down into your toes, maybe flex your ankles. On the upside of that, on your torso, look at what's happening in your belly. Is it soft or is it tense? Did the pressure shift to your back? And if so, like maybe lean your back against the chair that you're sitting in. When you're breathing, are you taking breaths that are big enough to move your chest cavity with a soft belly? It's easier to do that if you also release your shoulders and drop them down. From there, you might even get a little bit of a neck roll in where you just kind of remind yourself that you are not a lizard by checking out the space around you. And even if you look behind yourself, so that the fight, flight, freeze, cortisol, hormone chemicals that are coursing through your brain because your butt cheeks are clenched can just have some time to move. Nothing's chasing you. No one's out to get you. You are safe and have what you need. Be in your body for a moment. From that place of stillness, you might be able to hear your intuition. You can hear the whisper. You can approach the high priestess in such a way that she's not going to shoo you off. You might be actually ready to receive what she has to say. If you are in crisis response mode, tension, anger, frustration, out of alignment, if you are in lack, in struggle, in survival mode, the wisdom might not be accessible to you. And that's okay, because the high priestess ain't gonna show up in every reading. But when she does, know that she's there to offer you a gift that is like so much bigger than, you know, is marriage in my future or whatever, you know what I mean? You ask the cards, like, there's an opportunity for like something that can stay with you. And I tell people to do this, like if you have a meeting that you're in, if you are anxious taking tests, if you have an interview that's coming up or a conversation that stresses you out, and you notice your body flexing and clenching, you can do this and nobody knows you're doing it. You don't have to go turn off the lights and turn on a meditation track and like, do anything different. You can just be in your body and unclench your butt cheeks. For folks who have trauma, sexual trauma, this might be a challenge. Also for women who have like conditions related to their pelvic floors and bladders, like it might elicit a certain sensation. It's like the opposite of a Kegel or Kegel, however you pronounce it, right? Because it's the softening of the pelvic floor to like let it lay flat. So it might make you feel like you got to pee, or there might be some emotions that come up for you in the unclenching and the release. So perhaps maybe if that is you, maybe, an interview isn't the place to first try it. You know what I mean? I would say practice it while you're watching television, while you're at home, listen to a podcast, while you're standing in the kitchen washing dishes, doing something that feels rather benign so that you have something that you can switch back into in the event that some big feelings come up that don't feel like they can be managed in that time frame. But unclench your butt cheeks so you can hear, so you can pay attention, so you can focus, and so you can relax. Cause like, why are you walking around with your asshole tight? Who is coming to like what is going on? Beloved,
It's a lot of
it's,
work.
it's a lot of work. All that energy. It's so much energy that we put into maintaining misalignment and then wondering why
Mm.
we have like, then it hurts. I'm not going to say we wonder why, but I think that that is one of the reasons why we have, you know, physical and emotional pain. It's, all stored in all these different places. But if you need to access calm, I highly recommend starting by unclenching your butt cheeks. If you have challenges meditating, if you are someone who's like, I can't sit in silence. Okay. A starting point is to be in your body. So if there's music playing, okay, cool. But while the music is playing, get in your body and notice what's happening there and notice how like amazing it is when like your mind tells your body it's firing, the thought is firing the muscle response, right? Like when you think about it, the muscle relaxes. When you tell it to, it just does it. That same thing is true for every other word that you speak and every thought that you think. So when you get attached to shit that makes you feel gross or misaligned, like you also have access to tell yourself a different story, to speak a different spell, to say a different word. So anyway, I'm gonna stop preaching, but that's how I feel about the butt cheeks being unclenched. It really just allows so much ease and spaciousness and room for your intuition to be like, we got you, we got us. So yeah.
Mm. Thank you. That was so needed. I wish everyone on this planet could hear those words and practice the unclenching of their butt cheeks. I
Yeah.
thank you for like walking us through it also. And I hope I'm imagining like dozens of people, maybe hundreds, maybe thousands, who knows, in different places doing different things, driving, cooking, working out, going for a walk, like actually moving, and all of them practicing, experimenting with the unclenching of their butt cheeks.
Yeah.
And I was doing, I was following your guidance and feeling the feelings and unclenching my butt cheeks and, noticing my breath. And I do like, there's this softness. I kind
Mm-hmm.
of like, I am a soft creature.
Yeah.
I I am, yeah, I am soft. Like the world is hard. And I think we
Mhm.
are always understandably bracing in all these ways, like from
Yeah.
trauma we've had, but from like just conversations we had yesterday. We're always, something is bracing for what's next. Like
Mhm.
what kind of thing are we gonna have to deal with or feel or whatever? And so we don't, like once you're 40 or whatever, like it's just all hard. It can get really
Yeah.
hard. And the stories that we need to tell ourselves about how it's supposed to be, or like how this thing is victimizing us, or like how I didn't do this in a better way, all of that just reinforces the bracing and the hardness. And it's, I mean, for different people, it's going to have it's going to be more accessible more quickly, let's say, to
Mhm.
unclench. But in that practice, it's like, I don't have to be hard. I am a soft person with like a soft heart and a soft belly and a soft butt.
Mhm.
And I have needs. I felt like this, oh, I can see this space open where I can be willing to admit, like, underneath all the stories and all the like all the things I might be attached to that like I need to be true. Underneath all of that, there's just me being soft, having needs. And if I can get there, then I can kind of get anywhere. So
Yes.
that was beautiful. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you for the reflection, for the question, for like exploring the butt cheeks. I feel, yeah, I feel like we need ways to access ourselves without feeling like there is a gate around like, cultural appropriation,
Mhm.
spirituality, all those things. Like I'm really out here like, but we're human beings, everybody. We're humans. We like are these, phalange, awkward limb having, you know, omnivores who like shove things into our mouths and chew and then poop it out. And like we're humans. And so like what is that experience if not an invitation to actually live in our bodies, and try to find some alignment between our physical, our mental, and our spiritual, our mind, body, soul connection. So
Yeah.
much of the rigidity of the world exists to disenfranchise us from that reality.
Yeah.
And it's a really revolutionary act to love ourselves into alignment by being aware of the fact that our minds are connected to our bodies, which create a casing for to be like filled with the essence of our souls, like we get to bear witness to our own existence in really powerful ways. And the doing that gives a contribution, an energetic and vibrational contribution to the collective that we talked about that elevates and the frequency vibrates so much higher than the rigidity, the perfectionism, the oppressive systems, the, you know, capitalism, imperialism, misogyny, the patriarchy, all of those things, right? Like, so there is a resonance, there's a frequency that is just a higher pitch that hopefully those messages start to speak in when you just allow yourself to be soft and be the vessel, you know, be a human,
Be the vessel.
sit down someplace. I think I see the high priestess being like sitting in like a forest, you know what I mean? Like at the foot of like an ancient tree or something like that, butt cheeks unclenched, but just sitting there listening. Like
Yeah.
eyes open, not eyes closed meditating, you know what I mean, with like the mudras and no, just sitting and witnessing. And like I think that when we say like, the joke is like, "Oh, I need to go touch some grass." Like, you know, it is healing to your nervous system to go outside. I have a lot of homegirls who are like, I do not do outside. I don't do outdoors. And I'm like, girl, I can tell because, like your nervous system is shot to shit. And I love you dearly. Also, let's go hug a tree. I dragged my best friend to Sedona on 2/22/22 to take a vortex hike. And
What a good friend you are.
yeah, I tried to go. Well, actually, maybe she tagged along. I don't know. I tried to go by myself, and she was like, "You're gonna go by yourself?" And I was like, "Yeah." And she was like, "Well, I'm gonna come with you." And I was like, "Okay, but you got to come do this. You got to go outside with me, though. Like, you can't just like kick it at the Airbnb. You have to do the hike." So that was how I dragged her along, and made her hug a tree. Like we did this whole like thing. We had a guide. It was amazing, but sometimes it takes that. Like you just need to go and be on like I am in the world, not of it.
Yeah.
I'm in
It's
it.
all like here. We can participate, we can interact with it. And
Yeah.
I think when you were, this brought me back to like, if what both of us I think are saying is like the body is mortal, the soul is not. But if this is the body we have for this life, like it's the car, the vehicle that our soul gets for this lifetime, like what a waste to just be disassociated from it and to like not to be mad at it or to hate it or and it's hard to love your body in this society, in this culture, in this world.
Yeah.
They don't make it easy, but
Yeah.
we don't have to we don't have to go along with it. And I think when you come back to like this home that you are for yourself, that's where like the magic can percolate. That's where you can see the little like openings that we couldn't see before. Like, oh, yeah, capitalism's everywhere. Racism is everywhere. But like I don't have to like be resigned and I don't nor do I have to like accept it. Like there are still cracks and there's
Mm-hmm.
pathways for me to still be in alignment with what I believe and what I love and what I know is true about me and
Mm-hmm.
for me. And to your point about the high priestess in the forest and going outside, like human eyes can see so many shades of green and looking at green, which is what nature gives us. I mean, it gives us many colors, but like it does something to the nervous system. It's kind of like a whole dose of unclenching your butt cheeks, just looking at the green.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Shades of green are wild. Like,
Yes.
um, I saw a patch of
I'm like, am I on
like,
mushrooms? Like, or is it
yeah, no,
springtime?
I saw a patch of lichen moss, and I mean, global warming is a thing, but I was
Hmm.
walking in the arboretum the other day, and there was this patch of I'm not sure if it was lichen moss, whatever, but it was like literally like radioactive, bright neon green. Like I was like, I would just stand here and look at it, like, you know what I mean? Or one day I saw this rose that was like the reddest red I've ever seen. I just was staring at it like, wow, like the universe is wild. And there's no mushrooms involved. I mean, and if you need the psilocybin push to get you there, sure. But yeah, I think this this shaman that I don't know, maybe I guess he was a shaman that I went on an ayahuasca journey with was he basically said that, Aya, the goddess, the entity, the architect of all that is what gets exposed through the plant. And he's like, she only wants to be admired. Like all of this that exists just wants to be worshipped or like notice it in its splendor, like how the movie The Color Purple, when
I
Sugar
was
Hippie
just
says
about
like
to
how you
say,
listen, like you can't mock God by walking by a field of purple and not noticing it. Like these are gifts that we have. And I will say this, like I am very much a radical, like I am a Black womanist to my core. I advocate for the liberation of all oppressed people. I believe it. And I also know that like oppression is never complete. Oppression is not complete.
mm,
It's not a an end game. There is no winning that. Like your life is your resistance, your life force, your air, your breath, your ability to unclench your butt cheeks in the face of whatever thing has stressed your nervous system to a point of clenching. That in and of itself is a tiny act of revolution for just you reclaiming your humanity.
mhm,
You know what I mean? Like these the systems that are designed to defeat and dehumanize you are dismantled by you doubling down on your humanity.
yeah,
Yours first, like be more human. That's how you win. That's how you counteract it, is to just really, let's talk about what our actual lived experiences are. You know, by being present and being embodied. So that's the type of time I'm on for 2024. Like my thing for this year is like, how can I be more present in my body apart from technology, apart from, you know, capitalist dominance and really be present so that I can just be available for, should a frazzled woman walk up to me on the street looking for a high priestess, I could be
Now that
like, let
you
me
are becoming or
now that I yeah,
are a priestess.
now that I am becoming one, I'm not a high one. I'm but a
Okay.
baby. I am an infant. And I'm grateful for being given the permission to show up to my work this way. Like, but I'm on this journey and it's like a journey to priestesshood where it's like I'm 3 months in to this initiation that's like a lifelong process of like I have no idea who I'm going to be when I'm like 30. Like I might be the oracle smoking cigarettes and baking chocolate chip cookies. Like I hope that in another multiverse that my highest self of my high priestess self is already out there, doing it. And I'm glad to be present in this timeline, in this skin. Having this conversation with you in this moment is just like such a gift and a blessing to me because like I also remember, a year and a half ago in my coaching container with our coach, she had like a nicknames that she would use in scheduling whatever, and I was
Mm.
always the high priestess of whatever the topic was that we would be discussing that week. Or when I think about, when I first set my first altar or made my first offering and was like, I don't know if I'm doing this right. Or like, from the time where like my mom was like, I don't want you burning incense in the house to like me now being like, I made these prayers for you and like I'm down here smoking out the whole house or, it's like a whole for the past, for the present, and for the future. There's so much gratitude for what has already been written. So and you inviting me to have this conversation about the high priestess is like just mwah, it's like candy. It's so good.
It is better. It's like all the shades of green to me. Wow. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I believe you have probably been a priestess of many kinds and varieties in past lives and future lives, and you are fulfilling this destiny so beautifully. I'm so grateful that you're here doing it and inspiring us and teaching us how to unclench our butt cheeks and be in our
Yeah,
bodies and go outside and hug a tree
yeah.
and so much more, liberate ourselves, be human. So, wow, thank you. I love you.
I love you too. Thank you, Cecily.
Blessings. And
This is so I'm so excited for what you're about to do here. These conversations about tarot and like with people and um I can't wait to see what this turns into. And just being a part of it. I'm like, I don't even know. I can't wait to listen, is all I'm saying. I'm a fan already. So
thank you. I'm excited too. And I receive and appreciate your excitement and encouragement. That feels really, really good.
yeah, this is juicy.
Yes.
Hmm.
Okay. Until next time.
All right, dear. Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye. Many thanks to Ebony for sharing her wisdom and her beautiful beingness with us. So good to have her. And I hope you will continue to follow her work. You can find her on Instagram at Coach Ebony Said. You can also visit her website, ebonyisisbooth.com. She also co hosts a podcast called What Would It Look Like, which you can find on Apple and Spotify and elsewhere. And you can also subscribe to her Substack newsletter called Ebony Imago, A Black Womanist Gaze. We've got links to all of these things in the show notes. So click those links, learn more. And now, as promised, we're going to hear from the community who sent in these wonderful submissions about how they experience their intuition. First, we have Terry, who writes, "It yells at me. Could be turn down this road now or go stay at this tiny home this weekend," which led me to owning one and discovering a small town life. Or my intuition might gently nudge me to let me know during a depressive period that I will be fine. I always follow my intuition about people, places, and events as I age. Michelle says, my intuition can show up any number of ways as an inner voice, words from a friend, a line from a song or book, or even a street sign. I know it's my intuition because of where it lands in my body. I feel it in my heart center instead of just my mind. It can feel like a weight is lifted, but there's no denying it. I can try to think my way out of it if I don't like what it's saying, but it doesn't change the knowing. Chris writes, when an idea or a course of action comes from my intuition, often it feels more real. When I'm thinking about an uncertain future event or applying reason to understand a person's motivations, there's a sort of cloud of possible answers to sort through and evaluate. But when my intuition speaks, there's the answer. Even if the thinking part of me doesn't give that answer a very strong showing in the cloud of possibilities, intuition presents it as real. Erin shared, as a trauma survivor, I have to continually learn the difference between excitement and anxiety, between catastrophic, unwanted thoughts and intuiting. If I lie still in a hammock under the sun or in a corpse pose after yoga, I can calm everything enough to feel my intuition in my body. For example, if I have a decision to make, I think of one scenario and my gut tightens slightly. I think of another and it seems to relax. That's how I know what to do. I'm still learning how to hear my intuition and separate the signal from the noise. Bibliomancy, cinemancy, the right random movie at the right time, and synchronicities are major signs for me. If I experience an idea or concept from multiple sources in a short amount of time, I know it wants me to bring it to the light. Jane says, my strongest sight comes with lucid dreams. During waking hours, intuitive hits are always accompanied by a tingling sensation down the right side of my body. When I'm shuffling tarot cards for a reading, I know they're ready when the tingling comes. Myra says, I receive intuition audibly, but also in vision. It's unmistakable when it's audible, with accompanying bodily bright sensations. I hear it in my own voice, quite loud and very direct, like one or two powerful sentences. With these, it's always best to do what I've been told. I learned years ago that to not follow my intuition always resulted in life being much harder. Now I listen and act accordingly. The visions happen when I'm looking at something and I get a strange bodily sensation that something's going to change or happen to that thing. I get intuitive hits about buildings, that they will be sold, renovated, or removed. It's an unusual talent I have no idea what to do with. There's often deja vu woven in when I first see these locations, and then I find myself doing something there in future weeks that I had no idea of at the time. Amy writes, it's a knowing or a sensing, and it's often coupled with a physical sensation. I get a chill across my shoulders that sometimes makes my trapezoid tighten slightly, or it's a chill down my spine. There have been times where it feels like a wash, like when Brene Brown talks about a wash of shame or an expanding energy coming from the inside and hovering or blooming, which can come from the chest or solar plexus area or even my head. Where I struggle is the intellectualizing and doubting, but if I stay with the first hit, I'm usually in a better shape. Sometimes I'll relive the feelings when I think about the event that I had an intuitive hit on. Those same physical and emotional sensations will recreate themselves. This one is anonymous. For me, It's something like just knowing whether something is for me or not and becoming less concerned with the reasons. And instead, it feels like my body and spirit telling me, yes, move towards this, or no, this isn't for you. Something is off here, something funky, something too hard and muddled. Our final submission comes from another Jane who writes, sometimes I recognize my intuition as an instantaneous flash of knowledge. I have a sudden and clear certainty about a situation that is more bodily than mental or cognitive. It arrives as a mental sensation that's tangible but wordless. At other times, more rarely, my intuition comes to me as a kind of internal voice, one that speaks with words. For example, the first time I met a person, the voice told me, watch out for this one. This person later revealed a social ladder climbing or ambitious tendency, and along with it, a lack of sincerity or loyalty. It wasn't our friendship that she valued, but what I could do to move her forward in her career. At its best, when this voice emerges, I take it as a warning, but don't let it have undue influence in my dealings with that person until they have demonstrated that the voice is right. In other words, I try not to let the voice become a self fulfilling prophecy, but allow it to help me manage my expectations, if that makes sense. When my intuition emerges as this voice, I recognize it almost as some kind of ancient being that is both part of me but beyond me, like an old spirit, an ancestor, or even a past self stepping in to warn or guide me. When it comes to reading people, I have learned that my intuition is rarely wrong. I love these submissions. I want to say thank you to everyone who sent one in. This is probably something we'll continue doing. So if you ever think you want to submit something, I recommend you join the Typewriter Tarot email list, which you can do on our website, typewritertarot.com. One thing I notice about these submissions, or a theme that you're probably noticing too, is that intuition has the sensation of being inside the self. I mean, sometimes outside in the form of synchronicity or coincidence or just right timing, but also this internal just emergence. Like it kind of seems to come from nowhere. And like you may not have been thinking necessarily about this thing until suddenly the thought or the phrase or the sentence or the knowing is just suddenly there. And then what a lot of people are describing is something in the body. And I think intuition is a very embodied experience. And our conversation with Ebony brings that out. And I know that for me, I experience goosebumps kind of over my arms and my chest when I'm, especially in tarot readings, when I'm sharing with someone something that seems that I hope is true. Like I'm hoping, like I hope I'm telling this person good information, but goosebumps will come all over me when I'm saying something as a kind of validation, like this is important, this is true. I'll also get them when someone might be saying something to me, like sharing part of the story. And that tells me, like, this is really crucial. Like, this is the core of something. So I just wanted to point that out. Now, let me share with you a creative prompt for working with the High Priestess. And I want to come back to that last submission where Jane said, I recognize it almost as some kind of ancient being that is both part of me but beyond me, like an old spirit or ancestor or even a past self stepping in to warn or guide me. So we're going to kind of work with that concept in this creative prompt. And I want you to think about how you experience your intuition. Like, when do you feel like you felt it? How do you feel like it's shown up? And then take some time to create a visual representation of your intuition. So, in your journal or on a piece of paper, start drawing or sketching or coloring. And obviously, we don't know what intuition looks like, but just try to take the feeling that you get and represent it through color, shape, turn it into some kind of animal or creature or being or ancestor. And if you want to put yourself in the image and kind of show the connection between self and intuition, you can do that, or just depict the intuition itself. When you're finished drawing, I invite you to write a short note to your intuition, offering a little bit of gratitude for how it's guided you in the past. And then finish by asking a question that feels alive and important to you in your life right now. After you make that question, just add on a request that your intuition visit you in the next week in some way to give you some insight or information about that question. And then your job is to just stay open to an answer. It could come in your dreams, it could just materialize inside you suddenly while you're doing the dishes. It may come through synchronicity, it may come through messages you get from music, podcasts, books. Just be open to it. But when it does come, write down a short description of the experience so you can kind of capture and notice how did your intuition work in that instance. And then bonus is to take some action. Our intuition really loves it when we listen. So if it's coming and giving us information and all of the time we're like, no, I'm not going to do that. No, that can't be true. That's too hard. That would really rock the boat for other people. Your intuition may not feel super excited to keep coming back to you. It's kind of, I mean, when you give advice to a friend who's asked for advice and then they never take it, but they just keep bringing you the same problem over and over again, you don't feel very generous with like giving more advice, right? Because the person doesn't seem to want to use it. So, similar to, think about your intuition in that way. Now that you've seen it as this being, um, what kind of relationship do you want to have with it? Right? Okay. Try that out. I'd love to hear how it goes. You can always reach me at hello@typewritertarot.com. Thank you for listening. So good to have you along for this ride. And special thanks as well to Chantal DeFelice, who made the beautiful sounds that you hear in this episode and who is editing this episode. Thank you also to Ami Plas, who created our Creative and Magical Life logo, helping the podcast, both of them, look and sound good. You can find info about both of them in the show notes as well. I will see you next time. Have a creative and magical life. Until I see you then, take care.